She was clearly a mixed-race black woman, yet under her parents' strong persuasion, she married a white merchant. Also, their daughter could avoid discrimination and live a life similar to white families, but neither of the couple ever imagined that this decision would push their daughter toward a shadowed abyss. Soon after, Mary followed her husband and moved to the United States. The scenery along the way was beautiful, and her husband William behaved with kindness. But once they returned to his hometown in New York, everything changed completely. Her husband placed his hand on her shoulder, clearly intending to act as a married couple, and Mary pleaded with William to be gentle. But what happened next was completely beyond the girl's expectations. Afterward, the girl sat on the bed feeling wronged, her eyes filled with hurtful tears. Her husband slipped a firearm into his pocket, then walked directly to her side, and instead of offering any comfort, he even removed the wedding ring from her finger. Mary seemed to realize something, but it was already too late. After the man left the room, he deliberately called in one of his men. The girl cried and begged him to spare her, but the man's greedy expression already revealed what he intended to do. As distressing sounds came from the room, her husband calmly began thinking about his next plan. The next day, Mary was put in handcuffs by this man, then taken to a trafficking market. Although the girl tried desperately to break free, things had already reached this point. No matter how she begged, it was all in vain. Soon after, Mary was pushed onto a display platform, and even before the trade of the previous people was finished, it was already her turn to be priced, because young and attractive individuals were extremely scarce in the market. Of course, the price was outrageously high. Next, the man violently tore open the girl's coat just to show her figure to the crowd. At the same time, a middle-aged gentleman pushed through the crowd, and as he looked at the pitiful girl on stage, he seemed very interested in her. But as bids were being called out, the girl quickly interrupted him.
Stop this, I'm not a slave. I'm not a slave, listen to me. Listen to me. This man kidnapped me from my home in Canada. I'm the daughter of James Mink, and I'm not a slave. Listen to me. I'm not a slave.
Move her down in the bidding.
I'm not a slave!
Because of Mary's reaction on stage, the man had no choice but to take her away first and force her to recognize her current situation. But right then, the middle-aged gentleman stepped in and stopped the man's violent behavior. After the two exchanged a few words, William continued pulling Mary toward the auction, but he was immediately stopped by the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man offered $1,700 to purchase the woman in William's hands, which was an astronomical figure at that time. Although William could not hide the joy in his heart, he still raised the price to $2,000. Yet the middle-aged man did not hesitate at all. He pulled out the cash from his coat and handed it to William, which in a way freed Mary from the hands of a ruthless man. Soon after, Mary was sent to a plantation. A group of workers lived here, and it seemed as if a new dawn had arrived for the girl. But reality was nothing like that feeling. When the lady of the estate heard that her husband had bought a young and beautiful girl, the anxiety on her face was impossible to hide. Because in that era, improper relationships between white landowners and black women were not uncommon, and clearly her husband's actions carried questionable intentions. Meanwhile, Mary was taken back to the quarters by a white overseer, who warned all the workers not to think about running away, because the consequences would be severe. After the overseer left, the girl met a kind old worker and his son, Elroy. The next morning, the old worker prepared breakfast with Mary, but she couldn't even manage to peel a potato. So the old worker carefully inspected her hands and found that her skin didn't even have a trace of roughness, and he realized that the girl before him had never lived as a laborer. At dinner that night, Mary openly told the two about her past and hoped they could help her escape. But Elroy did not think it was a good idea. With skin the same color as theirs, there was nothing unusual about her in a time ruled by slavery. Besides, helping her escape could cost them their lives. But the heartbroken girl refused to accept her fate. 3 weeks later, Mary began adapting to fieldwork, but when she went to the river to wash away the sweat from her body, the plantation owner quietly approached her. The girl didn't realize that his eyes were watching her, and she had no choice but to grow cautious. That night, she tried to leave the plantation while the others slept, but Elroy, awakened by the noise, stopped her immediately. Elroy anxiously told her that no one had ever escaped from the plantation. He even showed her a scar he got years ago from trying to flee, so he desperately begged Mary not to act recklessly. Meanwhile, far away in Canada, Mary's parents were praying under the starlight for their daughter's happiness, unaware that Mary had already been sold by her husband. The next day, While others were not paying attention, the girl quietly entered the owner's house, wanting to steal envelopes and writing tools to write a letter to her parents, hoping they could rescue her soon. But the owner happened to pass by, and luckily he did not notice what she was doing. Mary calmly lied and said she wanted to find a book to read from the shelf, and unexpectedly the man asked her to read it aloud. After that, the girl could only pretend to obey her owner's request, but when she read only halfway, she was suddenly interrupted. The man wore an unsettling smile and slipped the book into Mary's pocket.
We let this be our little secret.
Girl who was trying to leave happened to be seen by the lady of the estate, and the lady seemed long accustomed to her husband's questionable intentions. That night, Mary used the stolen paper and pen to write a letter asking her parents for help, but how to send it became an immediate problem. 3 days later, when the mail carrier came to the estate to collect letters as he did every week, Mary hid quietly in a corner, waiting for the right moment to send her letter out. Elroy, who was working nearby, noticed this but at first did not want to get involved. Yet after struggling with his thoughts, he felt too sorry for her to simply ignore it. So when the mail carrier and the owner were talking, Elroy stopped Mary from acting abruptly, slipped the letter into his own pocket, then pretended to be a cheerful and obedient worker as he greeted the mail carrier. Just as the postman was about to ride off, Elroy suddenly pulled out a nail and tapped the horse's flank. Startled, the horse reared up violently, throwing the postman to the ground. The opportunity was rare, and while the owner was helping the mail carrier up, Elroy quickly slipped Mary's envelope into the mailbag. Everything seemed to go smoothly, though Elroy could not avoid being scolded afterward. Once the mail carrier rode off, Mary finally showed a hopeful smile. Because of this incident, the girl seemed to develop a quiet affection for the tall young man before her. The scene shifts to a faraway place in Canada, where an elderly couple received a letter from their daughter in New York. They had expected Mary to tell them about a happy life, but the moment the man opened the envelope, he was shocked by the words before him.
Oh no, this can't be true. James, tell me it's not true.
Son of a...
No, it's a mistake. It must be a mistake.
That is Mary's writing it.
The next day, James took his wife to meet the influential Lord Elgin. They hoped communication with Washington could be arranged soon so their daughter might be freed from danger. Because James, a black businessman in Toronto, had access to influential circles, this was exactly why he once pushed so hard for his daughter to marry a white man. But reality turned out nothing like he imagined. Due to ongoing border conflicts between the United States and Canada, it was considered inappropriate for a black man to negotiate with the other side. So Lord Elgin had no choice but to refuse James's request. That night, James sat in deep reflection and shed tears, realizing that his own selfish decisions might have led his daughter into such suffering. After long consideration, the anxious couple decided to travel to the southern United States to rescue their daughter themselves. But the journey was not as easy as they had imagined. They had not even left Toronto when local white men pointed weapons at them because black people were not allowed outside late at night. Fortunately, James was well known locally, and once he identified himself, the misunderstanding was avoided. But when the couple arrived at the station the next day to head toward the United States, the situation had changed entirely. James attempted to use his status and speak with arrogance toward the white station attendant, but in this remote place, there was no such thing as equality. A black man trying to act proud here could lose his life at any moment if the patrolling officers were displeased. Fortunately, his white wife reacted quickly and told them that James was actually her servant, and after apologizing to the white ticket clerk, the crisis finally passed. Thus, the two finally boarded the train heading toward New York State. But what kind of obstacles awaited them in that land shaped by discrimination remained unknown. Meanwhile, kind-hearted Mary used her free time to teach the children on the plantation how to write, but she had no idea that the workers here were nothing like her. She had received higher education in Toronto, while the plantation workers were forbidden from learning to read or write. Elroy tried to warn her kindly, but the girl stubbornly refused to listen. A few days later, trouble eventually came. The overseer stormed into the quarters and announced that a child had been caught practicing writing, which clearly had something to do with Mary, because she was the only one who had taken a book from the main house. Just as the overseer was about to punish Mary, Elroy stepped forward and claimed he was the one who had taken the book. The overseer doubted him and told him to read a few sentences, and to everyone's surprise, Elroy managed to struggle through it. This made the situation impossible to control. The overseer then called Elroy outside, declaring he would punish him in front of all the workers for disobeying orders. The heavy sound of the lash shocked everyone present and brought tears of pain to Mary's eyes. The punishment lasted for 10 whole minutes, and Elroy didn't let out a single cry. which showed how strong his endurance was. Afterward, his mother cleaned his wounds, and Mary expressed her deep apology. Elroy held the girl's hand like a quiet warrior protecting the woman he cared for. 3 days later, James and his wife finally arrived in the southern United States, and Mary was still suffering unwanted attention from the estate owner. The owner placed his hand on her shoulder, startling her so much that she cut her finger while peeling a potato. What she didn't expect was that he even tried to lean in as if to tend to the wound inappropriately, and even the nearby workers couldn't bear to watch. His reckless behavior made Mary pull away from him with all her strength.
Don't you ever touch me again!
I think you're forgetting who I am. I paid a great deal of money for you. I'll do with you as I please.
His plan failed once again, but he clearly wasn't ready to give up. The next day, Mary carried a plate of pastries into the main house to serve the owner's guests. The moment she saw the middle-aged woman before her, she was so shocked that she dropped the tray, because the white woman standing there was her mother, whom she had not seen for many years. It was clear that her family had finally come to save her, but to avoid the estate owner becoming suspicious, both of them acted with great caution. When Mary arrived at the stables, she also saw her father, and the two embraced in painful silence. All the hardship and suffering made it impossible for the man to hide his tears of regret. Now the only problem they faced was how to get their daughter out of the plantation. Meanwhile, Mary's mother was pretending to be a wealthy businesswoman who wanted to buy the owner's land, and with this excuse she gained the trust of the estate owner and his wife. She said she wanted to stay for several more days to conduct a deeper inspection of the land, while in truth she was buying time to rescue her daughter. That night, the three began discussing an escape plan. James, who had lived in Toronto for many years, believed they should escape by the main road to reach the station quickly, but Elroy disagreed, and based on his years of living here, he believed they should escape through the dense forest. The two argued endlessly, and James even thought he was meddling in matters that did not concern him. Although he was also a black man, he still looked down on someone with the same heritage, which was the very reason he once insisted his daughter marry a white man. 3 days later, James became his wife's personal driver and hid well inside the estate without being noticed. But nothing stays hidden forever. One of the overseers went to the stables, and James feared his belongings would be discovered because he had hidden luggage there. So he followed quickly. Then, catching the man off guard, James struck him hard. He picked up the revolver on the ground, intending to finish him. Fortunately, his wife rushed over in time to stop him. They had come to save their daughter, not to cause greater trouble, but now that their identities were exposed, they had to start the escape immediately. So they found the pastor they had contacted beforehand to serve as support outside the estate, and they began their plan. Next, the couple drove to the main house, where the wife tried to delay the estate owner by discussing land matters, while James went quickly to find his daughter who was working. Time was extremely tight, so there was no need for explanations. The only choice now was to escape. At that moment, Elroy also walked over, and he did not want to miss such a rare chance at freedom. After receiving James's permission, he said he needed a moment because he had to say goodbye to his mother who had raised him for so many years. Elroy went to her room, and after struggling deeply within himself, he finally spoke of his hidden wish. He only hoped she would understand his lifelong desire for freedom. After their short farewell, his mother told him to walk forward without looking back. Perhaps at that moment, only a mother could feel the pain of letting go forever. Meanwhile, another overseer reached the stables and found a hidden carriage and spare clothing. James walked in calmly and revealed his true identity. The only reason he was so composed was because someone behind him was ready to knock the overseer out. When the overseer woke up, he rushed out and saw that the carriage had not gone far, so he mounted a horse to chase them. But when he stopped the carriage, he found no one inside. Clearly fooled by a diversion. Elsewhere, Elroy and Mary successfully escaped and reunited with the pastor who had been waiting. He covered them with canvas and continued the escape route. At the same time, Mary's mother was still holding the estate owner in conversation, but when a bell rang urgently, it was clear something had gone wrong. As expected, the overseer rushed in to report that workers had escaped. Mary's mother used the chaos as a chance to slip away and join her husband. After some time on the road, the couple finally reunited with their daughter, but there was no time for emotional moments, and they had to make an immediate plan to escape. Back at the estate, the owner was furious and ordered someone to fetch a piece of Mary's clothing so he could use the dogs to track her scent. Unexpectedly, the dogs followed the scent straight to the owner's own house, and when they ran upstairs, they trapped the lady of the estate. Only then did the owner realize the group had carefully planned this. While he was helpless, Mary's former husband William arrived. proving how fast news of the escape had spread. William was not a horse merchant at all, but an experienced tracker who specialized in capturing runaways. He could bring them back quickly, but he demanded $3,000 up front and $3,000 more upon success. Though the price was steep, it was the only option available. The tracker indeed had his methods, and in just one day he found the group. They ran desperately through the forest, but a family with belongings could not outrun trained pursuers. Because of the rough ride, Mary even fell. When her father lifted her up, William and his men were already close behind, so James told his wife to go ahead while he carried Mary into the woods. William and his men split into two teams, appearing confident in their hunt. Meanwhile, Elroy and Mary's mother reached the coast with their guide, but the trackers arrived at the same time. The tracker aimed his weapon and ordered them to surrender, but just as the hunter thought he had them, someone else was waiting in the shadows. James had paid the guide well, so of course he would take responsibility for the entire operation. The scene shifts to James carrying his daughter, only to encounter William blocking their way. They knew each other well. It was because Mary married this man that she suffered the fate of being sold. James had long held hatred toward William, but the man had a weapon, so James could not act rashly. Yet during the standoff, James struck decisively, grabbing the weapon and attacking the man who had caused his daughter so much pain. But Mary was too kind-hearted, and she stopped her father from going further. They wanted William to leave, but he still had another weapon hidden. This put James in immediate danger. At the critical moment, Mary picked up the weapon on the ground and stopped William for good. Father and daughter left quickly as all the terrible experiences finally faded behind them, and the family reunited safely. Soon after, they boarded a small boat and left this place that had never belonged to them. The story ends here. I'm a movie enthusiast. Thank you for subscribing to my channel, and see you next time.